Whether it's the bite, the fight, the fish, or the people we chase them with, fishing is an amazing way to connect to what really matters. From the beginner to the experienced angler, there's always more to do, explore, or try in fishing. This is a chance to discuss and celebrate all of it. This is the Love of Fishing podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Love of Fishing podcast. I'm your host, Lyle Gator. If you're a new viewer or listener to the show, welcome. I appreciate you tuning in because we've got a great show ahead for you this week. The Love of Fishing podcast is a show dedicated to sharing the love of the sport, discussing and educating all that's fishing, and always having a good time. This week, I'm excited to introduce a new friend of mine to the podcast. His name is Jason Barnucz, and you may know him as The Real Angle on social media. Jason is a very passionate multi-species angler hailing from the Norfolk region. He's also a fisheries biologist with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, which is the federal government. And he's got a lot of really cool takes and a lot of cool stories about fishing in Norfolk for all kinds of different species. So it's great to have him on the show this week. If you haven't checked out some of the other podcasts in previous weeks, I encourage you to do so. Just hit up my channel and you'll see all the episodes there. Thanks guys for tuning in. Hope you enjoy. I'd like to thank this week's sponsor of the Love of Fishing podcast, Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver makes the famous Spin Doctor, which has been a great rotating flasher used on Lake Ontario and all the Great Lakes for that matter. Dreamweaver doesn't just make the Spin Doctor, they have a full lineup of spoons and other tools to help you catch more salmon. Thanks Shane for your support of the show. If you want to see what the prize is, check out my Facebook and Instagram. I'll have a picture of the prize up there. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. This week, the comment that I'm looking for is for you to tell your favorite tale of a weird catch in Ontario. Talking to Jason, I thought it'd be a great subject and something to talk about is a fish that's maybe surprised you that you've caught when you're targeting something else or something that is pretty rare. All you have to do, just 2 easy steps. Thanks again to Dreamweaver for sponsoring this week's episode. Welcome to the show, Jason. I know that you're a passionate angler, fisheries biologist, you're a dad. Thank you for joining the show. I'm very excited to talk to you today about multi-species fishing and fishing in your home waters, which is Long Point.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lyle. I'm looking forward to talking with you about all those things and more.
This is actually our first time ever chatting in person. I know you've done a lot of fishing and dedicate yourself a lot to the fishery, so I'm excited to have you by. First thing that I do with everybody on the show is I just do a couple quick get to know you questions, and I call them the baseball program questions. So when I was a kid going to the Blue Jays games, I loved reading the programs and picking up on things that the players talked about their lives. So these aren't necessarily fishing related to a T, but I just want to get to know you a little bit more.
All right, let's go. Let's try it out.
All right. So if you could be a season, what season would you be?
Ooh, a season. That's a tough one. I'm gonna say fall. I'm gonna say I love all the seasons, but fall is probably my favorite because it's I'm a big guy, man. I'm 6'3", 260, 270 pounds. And I work a lot outside, so fall is my favorite time of the year because it's nice and comfortable outside. And the fishing isn't half bad either. I'm saying
very
fall.
True. Very true. Okay, cool. What is something on your Ontario fishing bucket list that you haven't achieved yet?
Oh, that is an interesting one. Okay, so it's gonna be. I'm gonna give you 2. One's a fish, which is I want to go and catch. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give you a couple of bucket list items, and it's based on geography.
Sure.
I love catching fish from different places. I'd love to catch a fish from a Hudson Bay drainage. It could
Mm,
be a coaster brook trout would probably be on the top of that list, but I'll settle for a walleye or a northern pike. I've never fished above the Arctic drainage,
okay.
so that's what I like to do. Down here in Norfolk County, we're pretty far south. But the other place that's a bucket list Ontario place, and it's a place that I've read about since I was a kid, and I've never done the trip yet, is to go fishing in Quetico Park. You know,
Okay.
as a young angler growing up, I read as much about fishing as I could, and I love the In Fisherman magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And Al and the guys, Doug Stangy and them, they were always fishing in those boundary waters. And Quetico Park is kind of a fabled place, and I want to go. And for a lot of that was to catch a big smallmouth. Growing up where I do, smallmouth bass is kind of king, and
Right.
I'd love to catch a big Quetico smallmouth at some point in my life.
That'd be a cool place to visit for sure.
Yeah.
So before we jump into some of the questions about, Long Point, Norfolk County, your home waters, and multi-species fishing there, can you just give me a brief background, about what you do and who you are?
Sure. Well, my name's Jason Barnucz. I'm 46 years old. I've been, I grew up in Norfolk County here. But when I was 18, though, I actually left to go to school. I went to Fleming College and then to Trent University. And I've actually, for about basically from when I was 18 till I was in my mid 30s, I lived all across Ontario, but mostly in the central part of Ontario, Peterborough, Lindsay area. And I sort of relocated back to my home uh, 10 years ago. And, for all of that, I've worked as a biologist in different capacities. For the past 15 years, I've been working with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, which is a federal ministry. A lot of people think I work for the province, but I don't. But a lot of my good friends do. And through that work, I do a lot of work on fish diversity. And what stems from is working on endangered and invasive species in southern Ontario, mostly endangered. And so I spend a lot of my time, and what I call field work, is working out in the field researching these things in southwestern Ontario. So areas like Long Point, Rondo,
Mm-hmm.
Peely, Lake St. Clair, but also a lot of the river systems like the Thames River, the Grand River, the Sydenham River, all these sort of southern drainages. And that's where I spend most of my summer. And then my winter is spent working out of a lab, although I'm working from home these days, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
I work out of the Canada Centre for Inland Waters in Burlington under the Skyway Bridge. So that's where we're based out of. But we do travel quite a bit across southern Ontario during the summer to collect fish. So my work season is basically 6 months of summer, which is May till October, working all across southwestern Ontario, and then 6 months in the winter, analyzing data, reviewing samples, and things like that. That's kind of my year-round program.
Wow. That sounds like a really good mix of different things, having that field season and then also the lab work. I understand that you like to fish with your son and you're a big proponent of getting kids out fishing.
Yeah, for me, fishing growing up was always a way to escape and sort of, when things are sort of weighing you down in life, you go wet a line somewhere, and I love a good challenge too. And
Mm-hmm.
growing up where I have in Norfolk, and I'm back here now. Now that I'm spending time here with our family, and actually my entire family are avid anglers. My wife Heather and my daughter Stephanie, but they're not as avid as my son. And so we do spend a lot of time as a family angling. But yeah,
Yeah.
Trevor and I, he really has taken to catching whatever species he can. And maybe it stems from the type of work that I do. Like I handle over 100 different species a year, and he's kind of say he's really latched on to that, you know, multi-species kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of these multi-species contests that have been going on online, he's really taken to that. So yeah, it's inspired me a little bit, Lyle. Like, through my life, I've competed in high level bass tournaments. I've been to BASS regional events in the US and represented Ontario a couple of times. And, I've been very fortunate and successful in sort of different aspects of fishing. But,
Mm-hmm.
now, fishing with Trevor, and he's, as much as I'm I also am an ambassador with Pure Fishing, so I represent Berkeley and Fenwick and a few other companies. But
Yeah.
I really feel that Trevor has become his own little ambassador, and he inspires a lot of kids, and we get a lot of comments about Trevor and I fishing together, and inspiring parents to take, or not just parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever,
Yeah.
to get out with their kids fishing. They reach out a lot to us for information, so that's been really cool. We really enjoyed that. In the past year, we actually set a goal to fish more than 100 trips in 2020, and we surpassed that by 20. So we had
No
just over
way.
120 trips. Yeah. So
That is amazing.
so trips, by definition, a fishing trip, Lyle, could be, we're going to go down to the creek after school and catch some suckers and some chub. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
It might be only spend a couple hours, but we did over 120 trips last year.
Man.
So, and 80% of those were within 45 minutes of my house, more or
Yeah.
less.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you get them in, right? Is you fish for what you have around you, and you take, I know that you carry a big sense of pride for all species, right? You're not selecting, you're not saying, oh, like creek chubs, that doesn't really count. Like, no, all fish matter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, a little quick story is last fall we were steelheading on a local creek. The fishing wasn't great. Like this past fall, the water levels were kind of low for local creeks, and so, but still, we go out. We're gonna try it, right? We go for a walk, and we actually started catching some different minnow species. And Trevor caught a river chub, which is not the most common species in southern Ontario. It's not rare, but often misidentified. He caught it. It was a huge specimen. We took a picture of it. And I should have measured it because I think it might have been an Ontario record river chub according to the Royal Ontario Museum. So
no way.
So he's we're gonna bring a measuring tape more often now when we go out fishing.
Yeah.
But to see his excitement for catching a record river chub, that was pretty cool. And just little things like that, and to see his excitement, and when he goes out with other kids. Like even on the weekend, he was hooking micro perch out of Long Point Bay like you thought he was Kevin Van Dam boat flipping a 7-pound largemouth. Like his excitement is kind of contagious, and I see it spin off on other people around him. And so it's pretty exciting to see his excitement. I think some days I motivate him, but I think also he motivates me. He's 13 now; he'll be 14 this fall. So it's been kind of a cool dynamic.
That's really cool. I know some of my early experiences with my dad were actually dip netting, and through that's how I got to appreciate all of sort of the lesser known species that we would catch in the net, and we would just basically survey them, check them out, take a couple pictures, and then put them back. But it's really cool when you get to see everything that's in the water, not just your game fish. So
the multi-species thing really took off for me last year. Like I've always been like that, but with COVID, and not just because of restrictions and access, but just kind of avoiding crowds. Like you go to a Turkey Point Marina on a Sunday, you'd be jammed with people. So trying to do what our family has decided is a responsible thing, which was to keep away from crowds. But it wasn't a bad thing to do that because we explored. So a lot of those trips were places that we've never been to before, or I haven't been to in 20 years, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I think 2021 is going to be the same thing. So maybe we'll hit 100, and I don't know how many trips we'll do this year. I haven't put a number on it, but we're already at about 12. So
that's awesome.
So we'll get there.
So in your area, can you take me through like what a typical year on the water for you might be, in that area, not thinking far away. If you were to fish locally, what might you be going for at different times of the year?
Yeah, that's great, because this is actually my mindset right now. Like we're getting towards the end of ice season. So ice season's been short, but it's been good. I'm not going to complain. Good for me. It's just being able to get out ice fishing in the south, right? Lyle? Like where I don't mind driving to go ice fishing, but I also like staying close to home if I can. You got your ice fishery, on Long Point Bay, it's yellow perch and northern pike, and you'll catch the odd walleye, the odd steelhead, and that's that. And then once the ice thaws, perch fishing is something that's just it has such a following in Long Point Bay, and in Long Point Bay and the outer bay too. So we're not just talking the inner bay, which is basically Turkey Point to Long Point, but also the outer bay, which is from Turkey Point all the way over to Nanticoke, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's a, the outer bay is a massive area, but the inner bay perch bite really is a year-round thing. The perch do move out of the inner bay come summer, but they come back in the fall because they do prefer that cooler water temperature. But so March and April is great perch fishing. Can't forget the pike fishing in the spring. It really starts to pick up in May. So May and June is good pike fishing, and then of course, holy grail of days is the opening of bass season, right? Like
Right.
Long Point Bay probably has the best nursery habitat for smallmouth bass in Lake Erie. I have no
Okay.
problem saying that. The sand flats in Long Point Bay have produced so many smallmouth bass, and I believe for a lot of Lake Erie. I think that it's probably, I'm not a smallmouth bass expert per se, but I think it's probably the largest spawning area for smallmouth on the Canadian side of Lake Erie. And it has a great success rate still because it's the sand bottom and you don't catch a lot of gobies on sand. You know that yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think a lot of those spawning smallmouth, they don't have that nest predation that happens in other parts of Erie.
Wow.
So
That's a great point.
I think it's a very special place, and it gets a ton of fishing pressure, but it manages to cope.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been smallmouth bass fishing in Long Point Bay since I was 6 years old. So for 40 years I've been fishing it, and it's not uncommon to get a limit, if that's what you're after, every day you go out, right? And especially in the first 2 weeks of July. But what happens is once the bay starts to warm up into the 70s, mid-July, late August, those smallmouth start to move out to the outer bay, and the inner bay gets kind of slow. But you know what, though? There's so much great fishing in the outer bay as the seasons change, because smallmouth you can catch all along the north shore of Lake Erie. And to be honest, Lyle, that's my favorite way to catch them is shallow Lake Erie smallmouth in July, August, and September. Less than 10 feet. You're sight fishing them half the time.
Yep.
That's fun. I could go drag tubes like the rest, and I do like dragging tubes or a drop shot, of course. Especially later in the fall when those shallow fish move back out. But when those fish are up shallow, there's nothing more exciting than hooking a big smallie, a 4-pound smallmouth in 5 feet of water that you saw. That's cool, man. Right?
Yeah.
So and smallmouth fishing just takes you right into the fall. And something I don't do a lot of, but a lot of my friends do, and I do tag along when I get the invite, is walleye fishing, man. Like, we have such great walleye fishing around here. Anywhere, outside of Long Point Bay, like over to Port Burwell.
Yep.
But out of Nanticoke is good. And a lot of guys run from Turkey Point out to the lighthouse at Long Point. Just great walleye fishing. And Lake Erie is a phenomenal walleye fishery right now. It's been the best it's been. It's so good right now. So it doesn't matter whatever you want to chase in the area, you can find it around here. I'm gonna throw this out there, and I'm not gonna give the spot away, but this fall, you've probably seen some of the pictures coming out of the area that muskie fishing has been picking up in Norfolk.
Okay.
And more guys are targeting muskies along the north shore of Lake Erie, no different than anglers targeting them in Lake St. Clair in the fall.
Gotcha.
And this fall, I was hitting I got a milk run of spots. I cast spoons for rainbows, and I got a 40-inch plus muskie on a Len Thompson 5 of diamonds. I was using a 10-foot Fenwick medium heavy noodle rod, with like 20-pound braid.
Yep.
I'm tossing spoons, right? You know the setup.
I do.
And I go in the box, and Trevor says, "Dad, try that Len Thompson." And I laugh because a buddy told me to try it, and I haven't thrown a Len Thompson 5 of diamonds, and it was a glow-colored one in probably 20 years, 30 years. I said, all right, we'll give it a shot. First cast, this muskie smashes that Len Thompson. And I didn't know what it was at first till it tail walked, like, how they do their, like a tarpon, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, as if I'm standing here off the shore of Lake Erie, on the shore, in waders, and I'm fighting a 40-inch muskie. and I'm not going to give the spot away, but locals know there's only so many spots to catch them. And but I doubt you'll catch a lot of them offshore like that, but because it's so shallow in the area where I was, but it's not a common thing. But guys
Mhm.
are trolling for them in the fall now, up between Turkey Point and Port Dover. Fishery is also getting better because it's changing, and the fishery includes all the species I just mentioned, right? So it's quite the place. And if you want to have some fun, we can go surf fishing for channel cats in the summer on a warm August night. Go what do you want to do, Lyle? We got all kinds of fish down here.
You know what? The channel cat thing actually, I was gonna ask you about that because I've seen a few photos of guys, yeah, just fishing off the beach, and that's something that I can't do in Niagara. I can't. There's a lot of parallels between where you're fishing and where I'm fishing in
Yeah.
terms of species, diversity of habitat, and being able to, no matter what the weather conditions are, get on fish. But the channel cat thing, can you kind of explain why that is?
Yeah, I'll jump into that a little bit. Actually, I there's an article coming out on Ontario Outdoors this spring that I collaborated with Tim Allard on, and Tim and yeah, basically reached out to a few catfish anglers. But I'll give you the lowdown why Long Point is such a good area. So where you are in the East Basin, so Long Point's pretty much in the Central Basin of Lake Erie, right?
Mhm.
I would say that from Nanticoke east is the East Basin because that's where the geology changes. It goes from sand and gravel to basically limestone, right? And it's
Right.
limestone all the way across. There's a few creek mouths and things that have some sand and gravel. There's a few little beaches along there, but pretty much it's limestone. And we're from Nanticoke west all the way around Long Point and pretty much all the way down Erie to the Detroit River. It's sand and gravel.
Hmm.
And so what the catfish do is in the spring, they will run up. Now they don't all do this, but generally they run up the tributaries to spawn. Usually when the water temperature starts to get into the 50s and the 60s, right about the time the crappie are spawning,
Yep.
the channel cats are moving up into the creeks. And they're big. Like these are Lake Erie channel cats, and you can catch a 10, 15-pound channel cat in a river that's maybe 30 feet wide in spots.
Wow.
Um, but then when they're done spawning, they'll retreat back out to the lake and they cruise along the beaches basically. Though they cruise the lake in general, because a lot of my friends will pick up the odd channel cat. If they're Paul Powis, who a lot of us know, charter captain out of Leamington, he told me a story about the damn channel cats messing up his worm harnesses as he trolls around Pelee Island. And so those channel cats will cruise those beaches. And so what you look for is a sand and gravel beach, which you don't have down where you are, Lyle.
Right.
But to say, how do we catch channel cats? You can't just catch them in the inner bay at Long Point where it's basically just marsh, right? Where it's
Hmm.
largemouth fishing heaven, but it's not good for channel cats. You got to be on the lake side of things. And if you get a bit of an onshore wind and you
Yep.
need a long rod, it's surf fishing. It's no different than what you do down in the Carolinas. A 10, 12-foot surf rod,
Yeah.
six, let's say 4 to 6 ounce lead weight, and you fire it out 200 or 300 feet from shore,
Yeah.
and that's how you catch them. I target them in the rivers in the spring, and then I also target them in the summertime. And it's funny because with all these species we're talking about, you know, a lot of my friends who are on pro staff with me with Berkeley and Abu and Fenwick and some other great companies, they always laugh how much gear I have, but how I'm not specific to any species. Like I have
Right.
lots of bass gear, but I also have lots of catfish gear and lots of panfish gear and lots of trout gear, and it's lots of everything because I love just being able to switch gears, not gear, but gears all the time.
Jason, it's been a blast talking to you. Thank you for sharing your stories about Norfolk and your perspective. I hope that I can have you back sometime. Maybe we'll get into some techniques or something like that. If people want to stay tuned into what you're doing, how can they reach you?
Monday nights I do a show on the Canadian Fishing Network on their Facebook page. It's called CFN Live. I'm usually one of the last speakers. So there's a lot of great content shared on there. The CFN guys and girls are really cool to hang out with. But through social media, it's just Jason Barnucz, Barnucz, on Instagram and also on Twitter. And on Facebook, you can look me up at The Real Angle, which is my Facebook page. And I have my personal page, but I tend to share a lot of my tackle information on the Real Angle page, so I can keep my personal stuff just for personal stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, people can reach out anytime. I'm always happy to give people advice and direction if I can.
Awesome, Jason. Well, thanks for taking the time to join the show.
Thanks very much, Lyle. It was great, and good luck this year. And I'm sure we'll see you on the water.
I'd like to thank Jason Barnucz once again for joining the show and sharing his input on multi-species fishing in the Norfolk area. Like I mentioned, that was our first time ever chatting, and I will definitely have Jason back for another show, and I hope that we can get out for some fishing at some time this year. I know we both have pretty busy schedules, but I think there's probably a pretty good chance that we'll bump into each other at one point on the water. In this part of the show, I like to go through a quick tip of the week. This week's tip of the week is related to prepare your gear and all kinds of fishing that's coming up in the spring. And that's to always check your line and probably to spool up with some new line. It's a good opportunity to inspect everything, make sure everything's good, maybe get some new line thrown on there, especially your monofilaments and your fluorocarbons. If you're running straight fluoro, it tends to get really coily and it may have suffered some damage over the winter, especially if you've kept it outside. Where it can get cold. Braid, usually not so bad. You can use that for at least a whole season or maybe more, depending on how much use you get out of it. But that's my tip of the week. Springtime's a great time. There's usually lots of line sales at your local tackle retailers. Here in Niagara, whether it's Peter's Tackle or Grimsby Tackle, there's quite a few options for getting that done, and there's really no excuse to be using bad line. So that's this week's tip of the week. It's that time of the show where I like to go through the poll results for the week. Every week I put up an Instagram poll and I ask fishing-related questions. This week I asked, what is your favorite base color profile for king salmon? And I had 4 options. First option was chartreuse and green. Next option was orange. Then I had black and purple or blue. So those are kind of the main color profiles for spoons. The most popular, at least, obviously, silver is a huge component of all those, but I focused on sort of the attraction colors for those spoons. So the results were pretty overwhelming. There's 48 people said chartreuse and green, and the next highest was orange with 8 votes. So pretty wide win for chartreuse and green. I don't think that really surprises me or many other people, but I thought it'd be fun to ask to see, who messaged me and maybe people have a real strong feeling about that. So that was cool. I put those polls up every week. Just, if you see them, join in on the discussion. I just like to talk fishing and see where everyone's at and hear some new opinions and some fishing stories. Guys, as you know, I like to end the show with a positive message. Like to send everybody off, through the next week with some good vibes. This week, it's nothing too earth-shattering. It's just that we're approaching the end of March here, and we're getting ready for open water. So enjoy, make some plans, get out fishing with some friends, call a fishing buddy, and let them know that you're thinking of them and that you're ready for a great year on the water. Guys, I truly thank you for being a part of this show. Next week, we've got a great guest. We've got Colin Lake coming in from the Lake Ontario Management Unit. And he's going to be talking about salmon stocking and some of the other programs that the MNR runs to keep lots of great fishing opportunities available for us on the Great Lakes. So I'm super stoked to have Colin by next week. Don't miss out. We're going to have another great giveaway and another great episode. Guys, thanks so much for listening. And remember, hook sets are free, and get outside and go fishing. Peace.